being kind to the other people in the room, even if you think their idea is silly or doesn't work or whatever. There's a way to say that allows for space and growth, and there's a way to say that shuts a person down.
Yeah. Well, and songwriting is a really vulnerable thing.
It is. I've been in all of the situations, and it feels so bad to be shut down. And it feels wonderful to be lifted up, even though your idea wasn't used right there and then.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sara Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. I am so glad you're back with us today. And here's the thing. This is part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, go back and check that out, because there's a lot of groundwork for stuff that we might refer to today. You might want to watch it first. So check that out and then come back and join us, and let's get going. So I'm super excited to talk to you about this one, being not only that you are an accomplished songwriter in your own right, but because you teach the subject to university students and to music educators. So can we get into the actual process of songwriting and all your brilliant thoughts about it?
So fun. Sure. What do you want to know?
Go.
That's too bad.
So if I was an up and coming artist and I wanted to learn more about songwriting, but I was not in an academic setting, what do you think is the best pathway for getting better at that skill?
Yeah, I think number 1 is listening. Find artists that you like and figure out what they're doing. Play their songs, learn their songs, learn they're playing these 4 chords under this whole song, but the melody in the verse does this and the melody in the chorus does this. And the guitar part changes in the chorus and it does this, and sort of looking at lyrics and analyzing, what kind of a lyric is this? Does it use a lot of descriptive language, or is it very straightforward? It's I miss you is a very straightforward way of saying I miss you. It's just there's no question, versus I hugged your pillow where you used to lay your head is another way of saying I miss you, but it's much more evocative and sensory based in terms of language, and I think the first thing that I would say is just listen to the people that you like the most, and then find the people that they listen to and listen to them. And then find adjacent genres that you're I think I kind of like this, but it's a little outside of my comfort zone. It's kind of you like cheese pizza, but all of a sudden somebody put lots of basil on the pizza and you're I don't know. And then you're the basil's kind of cool. It's a little spicy, and you start expanding your palette and learning what other people are doing. And then the next thing I would do is to copy those things. So, this person uses these 4 chords. I'm going to use those 4 chords. If you have understanding, you could change the key and do them in a different key. But you could just use those same 4 chords, and then, their melody does this in the verse. Let me see if I can write a melody that has a similar shape, or vibe and similar language, maybe about a completely different topic, and again, not copying to the point of copyright infringement, but learning from and practicing a craft. So that would be one way. I mean, there are a lot of books on songwriting that are out there. I've read most of them. A lot of them are great. You can learn something from reading about what other people do. There's a book by Mike Errico called Music, Lyrics, and Life, which kind of talks about all the aspects of songwriting in all kinds of different ways, from the business to the creative side of it. Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison is kind of the quintessential lyric book that's out there, and it's solid. But there are so many other resources out there that you can find And then the other thing, and this is usually the hardest for up and coming songwriters, is you need to write a lot of songs.
Yep.
And they need to be finished. And that is usually the hardest, especially if they're bad, because you don't get to the good songs without writing a whole lot of bad songs. And you can't.
Once more for the people in the back.
Okay. You can't get to the good songs without writing a whole, shit ton of, bad songs. The other reason to finish songs is because the only way that you can figure out how to fix a song is to finish the song.
Yes.
If you don't have a completed idea, if you only have a verse and a chorus, you don't know what's happening to the characters in your story because you only have a verse. You only have the first verse. So you can't decide to fix it before you know the rest of where you're going.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of young songwriters getting stuck in the not finishing phase. They're like, it's not good. I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's not good. Write the song. In my classes, I encourage bad. I'm like, I don't care what you think of the song. You're going to turn it in. It's going to be on time and you're going to do it through these specifications and you're going to get better. I actually, in most of my classes, I'm like, it's okay if you don't like anything that you write here. Yep. We are practicing the craft of songwriting. You might get songs that are absolutely amazing because you're writing all the time. But by and large, it's okay if you simply meet the parameters. You'll learn. And then you can write the songs that are awesome afterwards. Like,
I actually just heard a snippet of Jacob Collier. I think that's how you say his last name, of an interview that he did. And I loved what he was saying in this moment. He was talking about songwriting and talking about how freeing it can be to intentionally write a bad song.
Yes, I just gave that to a student.
Because you get out of your own way, because now all of the expectation, all of the pressure is off. And if you are intentionally writing a bad song, you actually might find something you like along the way, even though that's not the point. But all the pressure to perform and be good and get it right and all the perfectionist bullshit leaves the studio,
1,000%. And sometimes that's what you need. You just need the permission. In Songwriting for Music Educators, it's one of the first things we have people do is actually write a permission slip of like, I give myself permission to whatever you're kind of feeling maybe that day. Like sometimes, and it's actually incredibly difficult to write a bad song on purpose. Yeah. It's very easy to write a bad song not on purpose. But it's really hard when you aim for writing a bad song because everything in your body fights that tendency of like, well, that line's cheesy. Like, I'm not going to write that, and trying to do that is like, it's so hard, you know?
I often give students, so the students that I teach, not all of them are songwriters, but I end up teaching a number of students who are original artists and they're working on that end of things as well. And one of the exercises that I will often give them is to choose an artist that they know very well inside out. So inevitably they're like Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran or, somebody like that. And I say, great, go home and write a song. I want you to go home. So, choose an artist that their material and their catalog really well, because it just cuts out a lot of the pre-roll work. But if you were willing to do a bunch of research, you could do it with any artist. Go home and write a song as though you were going to submit it for that artist to sing. And so you are writing in the style of, that's really all you're doing, and see what comes out. And all of a sudden it takes them out of the style that they are habitually in, and it intentionally puts them in a different set of boots. And
1,000%.
Yeah, it's been a useful one.
It's really cool. And that's something that, if you are a songwriter and, you have a pub deal or something like that, that's something you're going to do anyways, is so-and-so wants this song, like, or they have songwriting camps where everybody, and I don't mean, for anyone who doesn't know, like a camp in this case isn't like where it's like in the woods and it's usually at like fancy hotels. No. And like, there are all these, professional songwriters getting put together, like a songwriter and a producer, maybe a top liner, like, and 2 or 3 people are getting together, and your task is, so-and-so wants a new song and they want it to be like X, and we're going to spend 3 days and like write a whole bunch of songs. And I mean, like hundreds of songs. You will write, like, some of the songwriters I know, they're writing like somewhere between 2 and 5 songs a day, you know, like this is not, and I think that's part of the industry that a lot of people don't always understand is like, there's the whole, I'm going to write an artist and I'm going to like, spend tons of time crafting these ideas. And yeah, there is that side and it's really beautiful. But the more industry centered side is you're writing minimum a song a day and producing it out, especially if you are a professional songwriter, like, and you're getting it and pitching it. And it's not, and that is the craft of sort of learning to quote unquote, not care in some ways. It's not that you're not trying to write good things, but you have to let go of the perfectionist ideas because you have to finish it. It's due at 5, like finish, done.
The emotional detachment has to be firmly in place.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing for a lot of artists to get around because they're like, well, it's not, I'm like, no, it's just a different kind of art, like, and it's a different kind of, writing and style, and it has a different kind of a merit and a different flow. It's just different. It's not better or worse. It's just, I don't know, different. It's a different challenge. That would be fun. You're like, can I do it?
Yeah. You used a term a minute ago. I know what it is, but I think a lot of people out there are totally unfamiliar with the term top lining. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Top lining is also, it's a great place to start if you're a beginning songwriter, because what it means is essentially writing melody and lyrics over a pre-existing track. So you have a track that like has everything on it. It would have like guitars and bass and drums. Generally speaking. And then the sections are sort of like you listen to the track and you sort of figure out, okay, at 30 seconds, that's when I want the verse to start. And like 30 seconds after that, that feels kind of like a pre-chorus. And 15 seconds after that, now this section feels like a chorus. And you sort of, you really need a digital audio workstation like Logic or Ableton or something like that to do this. GarageBand, Soundtrap, BandLab, like anything that will allow you to drag a track in and top line something over the top. Right. And also mark where the things are. But you essentially just craft like the melody and the lyrics based on the vibe that you think the track has, maybe what somebody wants it to be. And it's a great place because if you don't play instruments or you don't know a lot of theory, you don't need to, you're just making melody and lyrics. And then, and a lot of, top liner is a career. Like that is a legit songwriting career where there are people who that is their job in the room. There's a producer, there's the artist, and there's a top liner. And the top liner is making up melody and lyrics, producers laying down all the tracks. And the artist but the artist is giving a feedback and input on the lyrics and the melody together with the top liner. And that's a really common combination. And that's why you see often 3 people on the credits of a song. When you look at it is because, and more, even more, but 3 is like, that's why you see a lot of 3s.
Do you want to talk about that difference between, for someone, again, who's like coming up and has not yet had a lot of experience, the differences between solo writing and co-writing and some of the things that you need to be aware of, whether it's that like in terms of etiquette or in terms of like how that plays out that would be helpful to know before you walk into the room?
Song co-writing etiquette is is definitely something to learn, and it's hard. Writing solo, I mean, you're only accountable to yourself, you know? So if you decide to take a coffee break and come back to it tomorrow, it's just you know, and you're your own worst critic, and you can choose, you want to make the melodies all the same, then, you know, you get to make all the choices. You know, you're the boss, the CEO, the CFO, you're like in charge of everything. When you are in a co-writing situation, you know, if it's one other person, it's a little easier just because you only have two voices in the room, and often that feels very even and equitable. But there are still kind of unwritten rules. I talk about them with my students of like, the first one is just be kind, you know, and I think that's a really, really important rule. No matter where you are, is we are all humans and we all have egos, and they are all fragile, and we are artists. Being kind to the other people in the room, even if you think their idea is silly or doesn't work or whatever, there's a way to say that allows for space and growth. And there's a way to say that shuts a person down.
Yeah. Well, and songwriting is a really vulnerable thing.
It is. I've been in all of the situations, you know, and it feels so bad to be shut down. And it feels wonderful to be lifted up, even though your idea wasn't used right there and then. So I think that's the most like important thing. The second one is there are no bad ideas.
Right.
Get them out and just say, hey, this might be a really silly idea, but what about X? Because otherwise it's getting stuck in your head. And it's the only thing you're going to think about. Yeah. And who knows, because that might loosen the tension in the room. If there is any, it might catapult somebody to think of a different idea because it's so far out. It might be a cooler idea than you think it is. That's a huge one. And just, I think, be a human being, you know, like support the people around you. Be kind, and like, don't be afraid of bad ideas, and are probably the two biggest ones. More technical is make sure you block enough time. You know, if you get invited to a co-write, I think a good kind of block is like 4 hours. You might not use all of it, but and then understanding your role in the room, I think too, is another like big one. Like if you are hired as the top liner, your job is to write melodies and lyric. It's not to say, hey, I think a secondary dominant might be a good choice there. Not that you couldn't say that if you like feel that is a safe space to do it, but or you could say it in a way that would like work, but you have to remember that your role there is actually to do that thing. If you're the producer, then you're doing a different job. If you're the artist, you kind of get to do all the things, you know. If they're writing for you, you're the boss. Yeah. Like, I don't really dig that idea. But I think like it has merit, but like, it's not for this song. You know, I think there are still ways to be kind. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on, like I had Jim Vallance on the show, who was Bryan Adams' writing partner for a million years.
Yeah.
And he talked about just the necessity when you are like, when songwriting is your gig and that's what you do, there needs to be a willingness to, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to put the words that are in my brain, how to make them come out of my mouth. About not being possessive about the ideas, meaning it's not that idea needs to win, it's that the best idea needs to make it to the song, because it's actually all about what serves the song best when there are multiple people involved.
I think that's so important, both in co-writes and for yourself as an artist. What serves the song? Yeah. And sometimes that is not the story that the song is based on. Yeah. Right. It's, this serves the song better. I know it's not the original idea that you came up with, and I know it's not what actually happened, but what is this, what serves this short 3 minutes ish that you have to tell this story?
Yeah.
And like, how can you tell the story so that it hits the hardest? I think that's so important. Like, what's serve the song, not the story.
Yeah. And I think that when we write alone, when it's a solo write, I think that some of the editing part of it can start to come into the producer role too, where the producer can say, this is great, but you don't have a chorus yet. Your chorus is actually a bridge or whatever, you know, but you actually need to go away and write a better chorus. Maybe they won't say it quite like that, or maybe they will, depending on their people skills.
Yeah.
But being able to hear that as an artist and understand that it's not personal, that it really is about getting the best result and serving the song, that is a skill that develops, that needs to develop. But it does require a bit of a thick skin.
It does. I talk about it in terms of jeans, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So like shopping for jeans, I don't know about you, but like, holy moly, like you're like, you pick up the sizes and like all the different brands and you have your size and like you got this wash and it's the same pair of the same brand, but it's a different wash. And like, you're trying like, and you take like 10 pairs of jeans and you're wearing a pair of jeans that you love, right? But you're like, but they're starting to get some holes and some not so cool places. So I really need a new pair of jeans, you know? And you take them in and you try on the first pair and you're like, oh, it kind of fits. It's kind of weird, you know? And then you try on the one that's like just a different wash and you're like, ooh, this one. Oh, this one is kind of cool. Like, let me see. Like, okay. And then you go through all these and then in the end, you're just like, you know what? That second pair, that was cool. I'm going to get that pair. Yeah. But you might also not have found anything that worked. And I talk about feedback like this, like jeans, like try on the feedback, see how it feels, see how it fits, walk around in it a little bit, like check it out in a mirror, you know, like, and like when you get it, your instinct can be to be like, no, but just try it on. Like you always can walk out with that same pair of jeans you walked in with. There is no reason to buy. It is fine. You are the artist. You get to choose.
Yeah.
But you need to learn to try that stuff on because somebody might have a cool idea.
Yeah.
That makes your song stronger. Yeah. I talk about it a lot, even in my own writing, of just like, listen, your song is good, but where's the opportunity for growth? Yeah. Where could we make it stronger? And when we talk about them in classes, that's how I talk about it. I'm like, these songs are good. You're already good. Like you finished it. It's good. Cool. Let's make it better. Like what can we find, you know? And it changes a lot about how we think about feedback, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, jeans.
I love that analogy. I really love that analogy because it's so true. Finding the perfect pair of jeans is just like, you got to be committed.
It's like the perfect song. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you approach the concept of storytelling? Like you talked about it, you alluded to it a little bit ago with the, you know, I miss you versus I'm hugging the pillow that you used to lie on. But the concept of storytelling in writing and performing, I think it is so much a part of how we connect to our audience that I think it really deserves to be addressed quite specifically.
Yeah. I mean, stories are at the heart of songs, right? I mean, and you have such limited real estate in a song. You know, if you are a novelist, you could have 400 pages, 800 pages if you're Harry Potter, you know? And you have so much time to develop the characters and the stories and the through lines. But in a song, you have, you know, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, 4, you know, if it's a little longer in terms of like these days, like length of songs.
They're getting shorter and shorter.
I know. which is another fascinating thing to talk about. But but how
bridges
can you...
are disappearing. The bridge is just disappearing from pop music, which we can talk about that
because
after.
It's 2 minutes. But I think like figuring out like, okay, I had like, whether you're building it from scratch and making up a story about something, you need to actually write the book kind of before you do the song. Whether that's about your own story or about something you're making up. I think one of the most useful things is to, you have this idea about, I don't know, Melissa, and she owns a cupcake shop, and, she wants to make everybody happy. And, but you have to kind of like, how old is Melissa? What color hair does Melissa have? What kind of clothes does Melissa wear? Like, what's her daily routine? Does she is a coffee person or is she a tea person? And while these things might not make it into your song, the more you know about the characters that you are sharing a story about, you personally, the easier it is to write the song. So doing actual like 3 to 5 pages of writing just about like, oh, and her cupcake shop is on a street called Green and with an E at the end. And has pink and white awnings, and getting into like the details of your story. And if it's a real story, doing the same thing, like, what do you know about, Robert? And what do you know about like, how tall is Robert? And, what is his story? Like, what do you remember about this experience that he had? And what are the salient points? And like writing, like prose, essentially, just writing the story. Yeah, writing the backstory. So that when you go to write the song, you have myriads of information. You have the tear-stained pillow because that was something you wrote. And you can go back and mine that, like highlighting like different ideas, which then the song just kind of evolves out of that. And that's kind of if you're not sure about who they are, or even if you get through half of a song and you're like, oh, this is cool, but I'm not sure where else to go. I think you really need to know, the story. And if you've lived it, you probably know it, but writing down details is just going to help you, populate your song with the emotions that you want to evoke.
That makes sense. It's interesting. I have never thought of that in songwriting before. Like, obviously in any sort of like book or play or like any character development, backstory, all of that kind of stuff, that we sort of assume that you do that as part of the process. It has never occurred to me in songwriting to do that, but I don't know why.
And you can do it. Well, you can do it right through the lyric of the song, but sometimes we get stuck in, like I'll see first verses about one thing, and then the second verse is kind of about that thing, but it's not really a development of the story, right? Like, so like, Pat Pattison, I like this concept a lot. He talks about what's called box development, where like, as you go through the song, the ideas gain weight. And so that when you hear the chorus the first time, you feel one way about it. And when you hear it the second time, you have either deeper or more knowledge about the situation that's going on. And so you feel the chorus differently. And then you might get a bridge or a third verse or a little interlude, and you've had time to kind of just sit with that idea. And then boom, that last chorus, you're just like, oh, wow. Like I had whoa, and if you can get that to feel heavier in a way, and that's where that story development comes in of just, do you know your characters? Are you sure? And the more you write, the easier it gets to do just like in a song. But if you're a beginner and you're not sure how to get like the second verse, you have this cool idea, write pages of just who is this person? And like, what are they doing? What do they eat for breakfast? Like, don't think about, like, it's kind of like letting go of anything that you think is wrong. It's just like, write everything you can think of about this person, like invent them. Because then when you go back to your lyric, the lyric will probably just show up because you're like, but I know this character. Like, this is what they would do next. And like, this is how they would respond to that. And, oh, okay, I'm done. Like,
well, it's funny because what you're talking about, it reminds me so much of stuff that I've done in different like business coaching settings, entrepreneurship settings, where you're doing your ideal client avatar development, right? And you're doing exactly the same thing. You're writing all the stuff, all the backstory about your ideal client, and you're just doing it about the protagonist and the characters in your song.
Exactly. But I love that about business. That's so cool.
Yeah. And now you teach entrepreneurship as well. Yes. Did I read that correctly in your bio?
Career development, like helping people kind of like navigate what they want to do, how they want to do it.
Yeah. But with specifically sort of within the realm of music, like entrepreneurship within music, or
1,000%. Yeah. Music careers and like songwriting, singing, performing. Yeah. Business music.
For people who are coming up and are not necessarily in an academic setting.
Yeah.
What would you suggest as resources or places to look for that kind of information around different career paths, different career development kind of stuff?
I mean, I think the first thing to go to is yourself, actually. And doing a deep dive into what I would call the business of you, basically. And this is something that I discovered there was a word for it when I was doing my doctorate, and they're called portfolio careers. And it's this idea that like, as an artist, you aren't going to just go to your 9 to 5 and you're a lawyer and that's what you do. And you have a hobby that you play, ultimate Frisbee, but like you do the thing, and that's the one thing you do. But as artists, we are so multifaceted, both in our desires and our skill sets, but our society doesn't quite understand what to do with us, right? Yeah. So the idea of a portfolio career where you are, like I think about it in a spoke and wheel kind of situation, or hub and spokes, where like you're the hub, right? You are, or I am Kat Reinhert Incorporated. And what are my assets? Like, what do I do well? I am organized, I'm driven, I own a car, I know, I have a horse, like whatever, might help you like do your business, right? You have logic, you know how to play the guitar. Like, what are your assets that you bring to the table? Right. And then thinking about like what you said, like, who are your clients? Like, who will pay you money to do some of these things on your assets list, you know? And that could be a bar gig once a week. It could be you're creating charts for somebody because you happen to have that skill. You're doing background vocal work. You're maybe doing a little teaching. You are, slinging lattes at a coffee shop. I don't know, like you're on Fiverr helping people organize and manage. Like, you have all these clients that bring you in certain things. Yeah. And then you have like, and I got this idea actually from QuickBooks because I was trying to do my taxes one year and they made me think about these things in a different way. And I was like, oh, this is how they're labeling it. Like I wanted to label them as like, something else. And they were like, no. And then vendors, right? So the vendors are the people you pay, right? The band that you have to hire, the sound engineer, the mixing engineer, I don't know, the person to like, fine tune your guitar, like those are, and so it's thinking about yourself as this business where you have lots of assets, you have people that you pay to do some work for you, and you have income coming in. And as a portfolio career person, you have multiple streams of income. There is never a point, even today, that I have had one source of income ever. And it makes me nervous to even think about that. Like, to think about putting everything in one place. I'm just like, no. It's just, and not that I'm worried, but I just like, I don't like that idea, because if something happens, then you don't have anything else, and, you might lose your coffee shop gig, and that's okay because you have these other things, and there's this other thing coming in that you've been preparing for that now you have space and time to go pick up. So I would say, like, that's my first advice, is look to yourself.
Yeah.
And then there are books like Alan Passman's, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. There's another really famous book, Ari, I forget the author's name, but there's another business book that's out there. Yep. Books on, like, learn about music publishing, music licensing, copyright, understand how to protect your rights as an artist.
Yeah.
Social media marketing, like that you can probably just find online on YouTube videos, honestly, because it's so changing that books aren't necessarily, the music business is changing, but it's slower than, you can keep up with it. Yeah. There are a lot, and it's pretty easy to find the music business resources out there. But Alan Passman's books I think it's on its like 13th or 12th edition. I mean, it's been around for like forever.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a good reference for all the things that you kind of need to know about. But I would start with yourself. Like, what do you do well, and how? And then if you're like, I really like booking. Okay, well, go deep dive into like, how do you book shows, and like, find a mentor, someone who already does it, and like kind of hack the education a little bit,
I think that there are a lot of threads of the music industry that are actually better suited to more of a mentorship style education, like a relationship style education, than a formal education. Not that there aren't pieces that, I mean, there are places where formal education is useful, but it's absolutely not the only pathway in this industry.
Absolutely not. You can learn so much just from, you want to get better at an instrument, find a person in your local area who can teach you. And like, you're like, but I can't budget every week. I'm like, that's okay. Budget once a month, and then practice a lot, and like tell them that like, this is what you have the budget to do, and ask them to give you enough material to work on. And then you work on it. And then you have a list of questions, and you come in with questions the next lesson you have. Or you find a mentor that you meet with coffee, once a week and there's so many ways too. Like, they don't even have to live near you. I mean, Zoom, like I teach on Zoom, and I have people from all over the world, and it's amazing. I'm like, wow, it's 8 a.m. in China today. That's amazing. Like, it's 8 p.m., but that's the beauty of today. And I think, like, think out of the box. Like, I went the traditional route, but there are, in terms of guitar production, like, I mean, even contemporary voice, like, I don't have any degrees in that. That was all on the side of everything that I did, because it wasn't really in it. But I did internships in, like, otolaryngology, and I've done, all this other stuff. Songwriting, I never took a single class, like, I just learned by doing and following people, and like listening to people and doing exercises. And you're right. There's so many different ways. It's like a prism of possibilities.
Yeah. I want to circle back around, because I realized that I forgot to come back to it. We talked, the question I had asked you before this, and we were talking about how form and length in music are changing.
Oh yeah.
And like, in pop music, and I think that it is with the prevalence or the rise of original music being sort of debuted on TikTok and social media platforms, where the attention span is shorter. And I think that has seriously influenced actual songwriting getting shorter. And like, bridges have disappeared, which I don't like, because I liked the like tension and release piece of a bridge. Like, the bridge took you somewhere different that but I don't know. Do you have thoughts on all of that?
I do. I think it's really interesting. I'm really curious about all of it. I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's the end of music and songs and blah, 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 you know.
Well, the Beatles, so.
You know, and so that happened when after, you know, AABA, you know, form being like the popular form for 40 years, like Bob Dylan and all of the songwriters in the 60s were like, no, that's too commercial. We need to go to verse chorus. And everyone's like, the industry is dying. You know, like it's been prevalent forever that the industry shapes what we listen to and how we listen to it. You know, the Beatles put out like concept albums when before that it was a completely singles driven market. You had an A side and a B side. You know, like the story about Maggie May and, you know, Rod Stewart was like they played the wrong side. You know, they're supposed to play, and that became like this huge hit, right?
I didn't know that.
Crazy. Oh my gosh, such crazy things. And now we've gone back to a singles market and people are like up in, you know, arms, we need blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but it's just moving trends. And I think the thing that's interesting, and maybe this will help, 90% of the students in my classes, their bridge is their favorite part of the song. Like they're all like, I write first chorus, bridge, chorus songs. And that's what I do. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to write verse, chorus. And they're like, oh, you know, so it isn't quite dead. But I think it's really fascinating to see if you can write a 2-minute song and have it work.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting piece about AABA is that an AABA song, if you have a decent tempo, is coming in somewhere around 1 minute and 45 seconds. And it is a complete idea and song. And that's kind of cool. Yeah. You know, and I'm looking to see like, are we going to go back to some of these older song forms or quote unquote, because they fit so well into this new, you know, market of shorter songs. I mean, if you take any AABA song and you just sing the head, like the way the song goes from the top to the bottom, it's short. Yep. You know, Santa Claus is coming to town. I'm not going to sing it because we're on air, but like if anybody sings that song and like times it in their head from the top to the bottom, it's pretty short, you know, but are you satisfied? Yeah. You're like, cool. I got enough information, and can you pack it in there? You know, like I don't know. It's kind of exciting. Yeah.
It's like going back to Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Yeah.
Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and an interesting piece of fallout. So somebody that I know who's been making records for a long time, but with the difference in song length, commented to me recently that it's interesting because with shorter songs, it now means that the record as a whole, because it is still in like a full record format. Yeah. But now the record as a whole is so much shorter. It feels like there need to be more songs on it because the record is no longer, you know, 50 minutes or whatever. Now it's only 30 minutes for the whole record. I'm making timelines up, but you know what I mean? The concept.
I do.
And it's like, I hadn't thought about it in that respect either, that it's not just the song, it's the whole package as well.
Yeah. And that I mean, the algorithms want you to put stuff out every 4 to 6 weeks because that's the thing that kicks them, you know, and that can be really disheartening, I think, because it feels like you're a commodity. Yeah. But you don't have to do it. Like, you can choose to play that game, or you can choose to just make music and put it out when you want to, you know, like you might not get on playlists, and just know that like that might not get you what you want. But my friend Jose Valentino Ruiz, like he talks about the mailing list and how, you know, if you have a great mailing list and a robust following and people engaged with you, and you put, you know, some music up on Bandcamp or something like that, and you say, hey, I have this album, it's $10. Mm-hmm. If you have 1,000 followers and let's say 10% of them, you know, that's 100 people buy your album for $10, you just made $1,000. It's way more than you're going to make with 1,000 streams on, you know, and so thinking about monetization of art differently and thinking about, okay, I'm going to put it up on Spotify because I need to put it there, or to any of the DSPs, right? Any Apple or Tidal or any of them, because that's where people find music. But I'm not expecting to make my income from that. I'm going to make my income from my mailing list and from engagement with fans and there's a lot of people that are like, well, that is not the way it should be. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it is the way it is right now. And so work with it and fight against it. And to get it changed. But, you're not going to fix it tomorrow. And so we either can put out music and have people know about it or not put it out. And that's a tragedy,
Well, and actually, like what you're talking about is the same way that other entrepreneurs talk about, like, socials are great, but you don't own them. They can disappear in a heartbeat. So don't rely on your socials because you don't own your audience. Having your mailing list, like every entrepreneur out there in the digital space will tell you over and over again, you have to have a mailing list. You have to have a mailing list. And I don't know why I've never connected that into music, but it's so true, because then you have a direct line to your audience. And if you have an engaged audience, you're right. You can sell directly to them. And that's how you do it, is with your mailing list. And you just have to provide, value through your mailing list and not spam people. But it's a tool that shouldn't be overlooked. It is talked about so much in other industries, and I don't think is actually talked about enough in this industry, being that it's the first time I've thought about it in this context.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think part of it is a lot of artists don't know how to navigate that. They don't know what they could offer as an artist. And I'm like, well, you could offer, you sign up for my mailing list and I'll send you a handwritten, sheet of my lyrics.
Yep.
Or sign up for my mailing list and you'll get first access to, the next cover that I post on YouTube. Or I'll send you a demo of one of my songs. Or, and then when you're writing your newsletter, it's about something you've experienced. It's not about, and you're plugging things that you're doing, but that's not the bulk of it. The bulk was like, hey, I had this cool experience and it brought about this cool song. And, what are you doing out there to be creative? Or, I'd love to know, and then, hey, and I have a show next week and I have, a new record dropping. And not that you don't use it for that, but, a newsletter once a month in somebody's email box they can choose to not listen to it. But Absolutely. If you're providing helpful things that, like, hey, creativity tip, maybe you're on here because you're a songwriting tip. There's so many things that artists can do to engage with people and with potential fans. I think it is an overlooked thing, especially in the age where it's hard to make money with streaming, and so where else can you get fans and people interested in supporting what you do? And, a mailing list is great. And then those people might become, they might follow you, like, which helps your overall, like, again, like Jose calls them vanity metrics, which I love. Yeah. Because it's just, you need them, but there's so many other ways, kind of like a portfolio career. There's just different streams of income in terms of like what you can do with your songs.
Well, and things like, I think for artists too, things like Patreon and is Discord another one of those, but those sort of like community-based ones where you get more direct, more intimate access to things that the general public doesn't. I remember hearing Jewel, songwriter Jewel. Now, obviously, she had a big platform. She hasn't been so much in the mainstream for a while, but she has I think it's a Patreon, and it's not, I don't remember what the price point is off the top of my head, but it's not ton. Let's say it's like $10 a month or $15 a month or something. And it makes her something like 50 grand a month. Now she's got a big audience, but it's those little things. And it requires not a whole lot of extra to maintain that audience. They just want a little bit more of you to do that. So those extra things I think count and are worth building.
I think so too. I mean,
I feel like we could sit here and talk for several more hours.
I know.
Hilariously,
so much fun.
I have 3 pages of questions and we got to question number 6.
Wow. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. This was a great conversation.
Okay.
This means that maybe another time down the road, we'll have you back.
That would be so fun. This was great.
But I really appreciate you joining me today. Where can people find you? Online, socials, web?
Everywhere. Generally, my handle is at Kat Reinhert. It's at Kat Reinhert Music on Facebook, but that's the only one that's different. And then katreinhert.com, that's my website. You can find out like more information. Mm-hmm. If you are interested in learning more about writing songs, I mean, I give lessons, and singing your own original songs, which is something I specialize in. I do that as well. But songwriting for music educators. And I want to be clear, like it's for anybody, like it is open for anybody. I mean, you don't have to be a teacher to get something out of it. But we've tailored the materials so that we're assuming a certain level of knowledge. So if you don't have a lot of theory knowledge or something like that, like it's probably not for you. But if you're a voice teacher, a saxophone teacher, like it doesn't, a private teacher, it doesn't, it's not necessarily for classroom teaching. Because our philosophy is we're going to teach you, the person taking the course, how to write songs. And we're going to provide you ideas of how to include and take those to your students. But our feeling is that like, in order to teach songwriting, you really need to have some songs that you've written under your belt because it's such an individual emotional process that like, if you don't go through it, it's really hard to understand what someone else might be experiencing going through that. And we have a lyric course. We have a songwriting basics course, like it's our signature course. And later this month, we're actually dropping a production basics course. So if you are brand new to producing and want to learn basics, and it's DAW neutral. So you can work in GarageBand, Soundtrap, Logic, Ableton. It doesn't really matter. It's very broad. And so we're launching that. And then in May, we're actually launching a creative assessment course. So like, how do you assess songwriting and how do you help people learn in creative situations?
Ooh, I like that. So
we're going to do that. And I'm putting out 4 singles. The first one should drop in April. It's called Green Lights. It's based on Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights. All right. It's a great book. Don't knock it. It is so good.
I have listened to it.
Oh, you have? Did you like it?
I did.
Oh, the book is, the reading it was so cool because it's like, it's got all these like handwritten things and like so inspiring. I wrote a song based on the ideas in that book.
Love that.
That's going to be the first one. And the second one should be, I want to be like Steve Martin, which is,
I love the title.
I'll leave it right there. Exciting things.
Absolutely. Well, we will drop all your info into the show notes so people can find you and find the courses that you have coming out if that's a good fit for them. And I'm just so happy to have had you on the show, and I look forward to doing this again down the road because
that would be amazing.
We've got lots to talk about.
Or if you just want to like have a phone call, we can just like hop on the call, and be like, hey, I have more questions for you. Like, what about this? And I'll be like, okay.
Done. Excellent.
Done. Fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun. And I don't know. It was just great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.